Welcome to All in All. Today we're launching into a deep dive, getting into a universe that's, well, it's way more than just spaceships and talking animals. We're unpacking all this great source material you've shared to really explore the Planet of the Apes franchise.
That's right. And our mission here, looking through these notes and articles, is to go beyond the surface. We want to trace the whole story for you. Where did it actually come from? How did it change over, what, 5 decades now?
Yeah, more even.
And really dig into why it still matters, its impact, and what it means for us today.
It's pretty striking, looking at these sources, how consistently this whole saga acts like a mirror. It keeps reflecting these complex ideas about us, about society, our place in the world, even our knack for messing things up and maybe fixing them again.
It's definitely science fiction, no doubt. But it's also packed with social commentary, some pretty deep philosophical questions, all wrapped up in, let's face it, really gripping stories.
Totally. It uses that wild premise, apes evolving, humans devolving, to make us look harder at our own world, our own assumptions about being human.
Exactly. It forces that critical perspective.
So for this deep dive, here's the plan. We'll start right at the very beginning, the seed of the idea, actually, from a French author. Then we'll track the pretty challenging journey to get it onto the screen and how the story and its themes kind of shifted.
Yeah, it wasn't a straight path.
Not at all. Then we'll dig into the big ideas, race, science, religion, power, all this stuff that echoes through the series and still feels relevant now.
Okay.
And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at the huge impact, culturally and technologically, that this whole franchise has had. Sound good?
Sounds great. Let's jump in.
Okay, so where does it all kick off? Not in Hollywood, surprisingly.
No, it starts with the French writer, Pierre Boulle, and his 1963 novel, La Planète des Singes. That's the absolute foundation.
Planet of the Apes, yeah.
Yeah.
And the inspiration for the book itself is kind of amazing in its simplicity.
It really is. Boulle himself said it came from just watching gorillas at the zoo. He was struck by their human-like expressions.
Just that. Seeing expressive gorillas sparks this whole universe. It's wild.
It seems so. But, the sources are clear that Boulle wasn't just writing a simple adventure story either. His book had deep literary roots.
Right, it wasn't just out of the blue. It connected to older traditions.
Definitely. It owes a lot to those 18th and 19th century fantastical travel narratives. Think Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels, the sources specifically call that one out.
Oh, okay. The whole stranger in a strange land thing where their society critiques ours. Makes sense.
Exactly. An outsider looking in, highlighting the flaws back home. And Boulle himself, he didn't really see himself as a pure science fiction writer.
He had a different term for it, didn't he?
He did. He called his work, including this novel, social fantasy. For him, the sci-fi elements were like tools.
Tools for what exactly?
Tools to comment on what he saw as the failings of human nature and also our maybe over-reliance on technology. He was using a futuristic setup to critique the present, really.
So that critical edge, the allegory, was baked in from the very start.
Absolutely.
But getting that social fantasy, that critique from the page to the silver screen, that sounds like it was a real struggle.
Oh, it was a massive challenge. Arthur P. Jacobs, the producer, he optioned the rights pretty quickly. But then he spent more than 3 years just trying to convince a studio to make it.
3 years. Wow. What was the big hesitation? Just the weirdness of talking apes?
Well, that was part of it, sure. But mostly it was the money and the risk. The estimated cost was creeping up towards maybe even over $10 million.
Which was a fortune back then for a movie, especially one like this.
Exactly. A fortune for a film with no guarantee of success. Intelligent apes running a society.
Yeah.
It was a huge gamble for any studio in the mid-'60s.
You can just picture the executives trying to wrap their heads around it.
But Jacobs and his associate producer, Mort Abrahams, they were persistent, and they made a crucial move. They brought in Rod Serling.
Ah, Mr. Twilight Zone himself. If anyone understood strange scenarios with a point, it was him.
Precisely. And Serling's involvement was huge. He wrote the first screenplay adaptation, and he didn't just translate Boulle's book, he fundamentally reshaped it for the screen. The sources point out he introduced various key features that we now totally associate with Planet of the Apes, features that were not in the original novel at all.
Okay, this is where the movie version really starts taking shape.
Yeah.
What were Serling's biggest changes? The game changers?
Number one, without a doubt, the ending, that twist.
Right. Boulle's book had a different twist, didn't it?
Completely different. In the novel, the astronaut gets back to Earth, only to find it's now run by apes, too. Serling junked that. He came up with the iconic reveal that the planet they were on was Earth all along.
A post-apocalyptic Earth.
Ugh.
Humans had destroyed themselves. Probably nukes.
Exactly. That ending just lands like a punch to the gut.
Hmm?
And tied right into that twist is maybe one of the most famous images in movie history.
Oh, yeah. He gave us that too, didn't he?
He did. Serling contributed the visual. The Statue of Liberty half buried in the sand.
Chilling. It says everything without a word. Human civilization, gone. Our great symbol, ruined.
It's devastating. It's the visual proof of the twist he created. And Serling didn't shy away from the grimness elsewhere either.
Like the museum scene.
Yeah, that bit where Taylor finds another astronaut stuffed and mounted in an ape museum, like a hunting trophy.
It's darkly funny, but also just horrifying. It perfectly shows the role reversal, how humans have become nothing more than specimens.
It's sharp, brutal, pure Serling. The sources describe his whole take as more darkly pointed, almost suggesting, maybe the world was better off without man and descendants, given our track record.
Total Twilight Zone vibe.
Yeah.
So Serling provides this powerful, maybe even more cynical vision. How did Jacobs finally sell that to a studio?
Well, it still wasn't easy. Persistence was key, and getting a major star attached helped enormously.
Charlton
Heston. His name gave it credibility, reduced the perceived risk. Heston then recommended Franklin J. Schaffner to direct. But the real clincher, the thing that finally convinced 20th Century Fox, was apparently a short screen test.
A screen test, just to prove the concept.
Yeah, pretty unusual. The sources say it featured Heston, plus actors in early versions of the ape makeup, playing Dr. Zaius and a human character named Thomas, probably an early Taylor.
What did they actually film?
They acted out a scene that got right to the core of it, apes discussing their evolution, questioning if humans came first. Could humans even develop intelligence? The ape belief that humans never spoke.
Ah, so it proved the makeup could work, that the actors could deliver these lines convincingly as apes.
Exactly. It showed the potential. It proved the central conflict could work on screen, that the concept wasn't just ridiculous. It convinced Fox the risk might pay off.
But even after Serling's groundbreaking script and that successful test, the script changed hands again, right? Michael Wilson came in.
Yes. Michael Wilson did a significant rewrite. And the main reason, again, came down to practicalities. Money.
Serling's vision was still too expensive.
Pretty much. His version hinted at a more advanced ape society, closer perhaps to Boole's original idea. But realizing the technologically advanced world on screen was going to cost too much. So Wilson was brought in with a clear mission: relocate the story to a more backward and cheaper society, and make the dialogue fit that simpler setting.
So budget cuts directly shaped the kind of ape society we see in the final film. But Wilson brought his own baggage, his own history to the project, too.
He absolutely did. The sources really stress this. Wilson had been blacklisted during the McCarthy era in Hollywood.
Right, and that experience deeply colored his writing here.
It seems so. The sources suggest he basically turned the script into an allegorical attack on the blacklist and a critique of McCarthyism itself.
Wow. How did he manage that within a story about talking apes?
It was clever. He used the Scopes monkey trial,
Yeah.
the famous 1925 trial, about teaching evolution as a kind of dramatic frame.
Okay, I see. So the conflict between ape science, like Cornelius and Zira, and ape religion or dogma, like Dr. Zaius.
Exactly. That conflict mirrored the Scopes trial's dynamic. Wilson used it to talk about pertinent political issues of his time, specifically highlighting how the U.S. had a history of restricting the rights of educators, scientists, and artists, things he'd experienced firsthand. It's very similar to the approach of Inherit the Wind.
That's brilliant, using historical allegory to comment on the present. So Wilson's script shifted the focus somewhat from Serling's broader concerns.
Yeah, while Serling touched on authorities restricting science, Wilson really zeroed in on the faith aspect in the ape society. Their belief system, based on the sacred scrolls, became the primary obstacle to science.
And because the apes were now less scientifically advanced in his version?
Their faith became more dominant, more rigid. The scientists, Cornelius and Zira, they get pushed aside, forced to hide their findings, like the fact that humans could think and speak. They have to appease the religious authorities, like Zaius and the Orangutan Council.
So the ape understanding of evolution gets muddy, mixed up with religion and prejudice against humans.
Precisely. Wilson's script really hammers home the need for clear separations between science, religion, and prejudice. It becomes a warning about what happens when dogma trumps truth, a very political statement embedded in the sci-fi.
Okay, so from that complex origin story, Bull's idea, Serling's twist, Wilson's allegory, the first film launches, and it becomes this huge phenomenon spawning a whole saga.
Like,
Let's trace that evolution.
yeah, that 68 film hit big time. And it led to sequels incredibly quickly. There was that initial run of 5 films.
Right, the original 5. Planet in 68, then Beneath in 70, Escape 71, Conquest 72, and Battle in 73. 5 movies in just 6 years. That's crazy
It
fast.
really shows how much audiences wanted more of this world. And the story, wow, it went in some wild directions pretty quickly.
Totally. Starts with Taylor arriving, then Beneath gives us the underground mutants and blows up the planet.
Yeah, pretty bleak ending there. Then Escape does a total flip, brings Zira, Cornelius, and Dr. Milo back in time to our present, or the 70s present.
Which sets up Conquest, showing the ape uprising led by their son, Caesar.
Right, the revolutionary Caesar. And then Battle tries to wrap up that original cycle, showing the aftermath, the struggle to build a new society. One source actually notes that film came out exactly 50 years ago, as of June 2023.
50 years. Man, it really puts the longevity of this thing in perspective. And across those films, we got some iconic characters.
Absolutely. Heston is Taylor, of course. Roddy McDowall and Kim Hunter as Cornelius and Zira are just fundamental, though McDowall missed Beneath due to a scheduling conflict.
David Watson played Cornelius in that one, right?
Yep. Then Rhys Evans as the formidable Dr. Zaius, Linda Harrison as Nova, James Gregory as the scary General Ursus in Beneath, and Harry Rhodes played McDonald in Battle, a really interesting human character trying to navigate that new world. McDowall even came back again later for the TV show playing Galen.
He really owned those ape roles. And speaking of Battle, there's that specific line Caesar says at the end.
Oh yeah, the source highlights that. After the final fight, addressing his ape army, he yells, "Tonight, we have seen the birth of the planet of the apes."
Chilling. It brings it right back around to the future we already saw in the first movie.
Which leads us neatly into the whole timeline complexity issue, doesn't it? Especially once time travel gets thrown into the mix with Escape.
Yeah, things get messy. How did the sources try to make sense of it all?
Well, there are different theories. Some sources suggest thinking about it as a multiverse. Like Zira and Cornelius going back in time didn't just change their past, it maybe created a whole new timeline, a new universe.
So Conquest and Battle might be setting up a different Planet of the Apes than the one Taylor found.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one way to read it. Others lean more towards a circular time idea. You know, like loops, paradoxes, maybe things are fated to happen regardless. The Mark Wahlberg remake played with that, and the sources mentioned determinism, the idea that everything's predetermined as a sort of philosophical glue holding it together.
Are we free agents, or is history just bound to repeat? The classic time travel questions.
Exactly. And all these timelines and reboots can definitely get confusing for viewers.
Especially with recurring character names.
Right. One source specifically flags the Caesar issue. When people talk about Caesar, are they talking about the original revolutionary ape from Conquest and Battle, or the Andy Serkis Caesar from the reboot trilogy? They're very different characters, different origins, different stories.
Good point. Need to be specific about which Caesar we mean. And the Apes universe didn't just stick to movies, did it? It branched out.
Oh yeah, lots of other media kept it going. Comics, for example. Some tie into the original films, some are canon to the new movies like the After the Fall collection that bridges the gap before Rise.
Were there video games too?
A 2001 game linked more to the novel and original films. And then Planet of the Apes. Last Frontier, which is set between Dawn and War in the reboot timeline.
And of course, television. The movies were huge on TV, apparently.
Massively successful. The sources say they got very high ratings when broadcast. That directly led to the live-action Planet of the Apes series in 1974 with Roddy McDowall as Galen.
Right.
And even an animated series, Return to the Planet of the Apes. They kept the brand alive.
So after that initial flurry in the TV shows, things went quiet on the big screen for a long time until Tim Burton had to go.
Yeah, the 2001 remake. The sources mention it as a distinct attempt to revisit the story, but, well, one source calls it ill-fated.
Ouch. Yeah, it didn't exactly relaunch the franchise. That didn't happen until a decade later with the reboot trilogy.
Exactly. Rise in 2011, then Dawn in 2014, and War in 2017. This was like the third major version of the Apes story, and the second distinct origin story for how the apes rose to power centered around Caesar.
And you can't talk about that trilogy without talking about Andy Serkis.
Absolutely not. His motion capture performance as Caesar. The sources call it more acclaimed and more historic. He just brought so much depth and realism through that technology, working with Weta Digital.
He'd already done amazing work as Gollum, but Caesar felt like a whole new level. You completely believed in him as a character.
Totally. The emotion he conveyed through that digital creation was groundbreaking. Which brings us to the newest chapter, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Right, the 2024 film. This one jumps forward quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, the sources say it restarts the story for a fourth time, but the key thing is it's set hundreds of years after Caesar led the apes. So it's exploring a much later period in the reboot timeline.
A whole new era, essentially. New ape hero, Noah. New director, Wes Ball. No circus as Caesar, obviously. And no Matt Reeves, who did Dawn and War.
Right. It's charting territory that we haven't seen on screen before.
Hmm.
The sources say Kingdom starts exploring conflicts between different ape tribes that have evolved over those centuries, building a new world on the legacy of Caesar.
And it's not just a one-off. They're planning more, right?
Definitely. A sequel to Kingdom is already greenlit for 2027. The sources frame Kingdom as the start of a new trilogy.
So at least 3 films exploring Noah's era. And looking even further ahead, the sources have some interesting speculation about where the whole saga might eventually go, maybe even looping back.
It's fascinating to think about. The speculation suggests future films could show the conflict continuing. Maybe humans starting to regain some intelligence or standing in the next film, film 5 perhaps?
Leading to maybe a film 6 where humans try to take back the planet using new tech.
Could be. And then, potentially, big-time jumps later on, like film 7 jumping forward maybe 1,700 years.
Yeah.
To a future where apes have fully enslaved humans using their technology.
Creating a world that looks a lot like the 1968 original, with maybe even a spaceship returning.
Exactly. But the key difference would be we, the audience, would know the whole history. We'd have seen humanity's fall, the apes' rise, the long struggle. It would give that familiar scenario a completely different weight, a huge sense of irony, bringing the whole thing full circle, perhaps.
That's a mind-bending prospect. Okay, so we've traced the origins, the often tangled evolution across all these films and shows. But let's get to the core. Why does Planet of the Apes stick around? Why does it still matter so much?
Well, the sources are really emphatic about this. It's way more than just sci-fi spectacle. It has this deep philosophical core. One source title even talks about it breaking through the forbidden zone of the mind.
Suggesting it makes you think about uncomfortable things.
Exactly. Prompting truly engaging and thought-provoking ethical insight. It's even studied academically alongside philosophy and pop culture.
So what are some of those big philosophical ideas it tackles? Anthropocentrism comes up a lot.
Right, the idea that humans are the center of everything, the most important beings. The films just blow that idea up by showing intelligent, complex apes taking over. It forces you to ask, what actually makes humans special? Is it language, reason, culture? The apes develop all of that.
It challenges our assumed superiority, which connects to another perspective mentioned, anthrozoology.
That's the study of human-animal interactions. The sources argue the Apes films, especially the reboot focusing on Caesar's viewpoint and now Kingdom's ape societies, are a great way to think about our own relationships with other species.
It's not just apes acting like humans, it's exploring the actual dynamic between species.
Precisely. It critiques that human-centered view, forces us to confront the animal question, what are our ethical duties to non-humans? It explores power, exploitation, but also empathy and connection across species lines. Seeing apes as complex individuals makes you reconsider how we treat animals in our world.
It pushes for a broader view, right? An ecological system perspective, valuing all life.
Yeah, encouraging us to rethink our place in the ecosystem. One source even compares it to films like Ocha, suggesting the ape stories, especially with Caesar's liberation narrative, implicitly critique things like industrial animal farming.
And the newest film, Kingdom, apparently keeps these philosophical threads going, strong themes like legacy, perspective, morality, explored through these new 8 characters centuries later.
They're deep, timeless questions. But maybe the most obvious layer of significance, the one people talk about most, is the social and political commentary.
Ah, yes, the allegory. This is where the franchise really connects to the real world, isn't it?
Absolutely. The sources constantly point out how it taps into the socio-political tensions of whatever era the films are made in.
And the connection to race and civil rights in the original series is unavoidable.
It's incredibly direct. Multiple sources explicitly link the 60s and 70s films to the civil rights movement. In the first film, Taylor, the white astronaut, ends up treated like a racial minority.
Yeah, the sources say he's like a black archetype trapped in a white skin. Dehumanized, whipped, beaten.
Even sprayed with fire hoses, just like the protesters in Birmingham. The film flips the script, forcing the audience to see oppression from the victim's perspective,
Yeah.
critiquing white superiority.
And the sequels got even less subtle about it. Conquest, especially.
Oh, Conquest is seen as a barely concealed message movie about then-recent race riots. Apparently, the studio even got nervous and softened the ending dialogue because the original cut was so clearly siding with the rioters.
Wow. It's described as a combination slave revolt and prison riot in Ape Face.
Exactly. A direct reenactment of the urban riots and prison uprisings like Attica. The visuals are key, too. Apes in jumpsuits, guards with weapons. The sources say you just can't ignore the context of race in the growing prison industry.
There's that brutal scene mentioned. A white guard actually bullwhips the black apes. It's impossible to miss the allegory there.
It's incredibly provocative, and intentionally so. The whole revolt is meant to evoke those real-world events. And having black human characters like McDonald grapple with their place in this changing world just underlines that focus on race.
The sources even suggest the franchise went from potentially being seen as weirdly racist itself initially to becoming an embodiment of black liberation through these sequels. That's quite a journey.
A huge transformation in its perceived meaning. Now, fast forward to the reboot series, Rise. The sources suggest a shift in the main allegorical focus there.
Right, less about race, more about...
One source argues the race subtext gets replaced, maybe half-heartedly, by themes of medical ethics and animal welfare. And this particular view finds those themes maybe less compelling, anemic in comparison to the raw power of the racial commentary in the originals.
Suggesting that racial inequality is still a more pressing issue than animal rights in that interpretation.
That's the argument presented. But that same source points out race isn't gone entirely from Rise. It notes the scientist's partner is South Asian, maybe showing changing attitudes to interracial relationships compared to the 60s, and the greedy corporate boss is black.
Okay, so shifting racial dynamics reflected in the casting and story. The source offered a specific take on that, didn't it?
Yeah, a specific interpretation presented neutrally. Miscegenation, no longer taboo, but black people in power is still the fastest way to the end of us all. Just reporting how that source reads the shifting allegory, reflecting maybe different anxieties about race and power today.
Fascinating how it keeps adapting. And beyond race, there was the Cold War stuff, too.
Definitely. Serling's nuclear apocalypse ending set the tone. And beneath was just a straight-up, bleak warning about the dangers of a nuclear holocaust,
Yeah.
ending with the planet literally exploding. Hard to miss that message.
And the whole science versus religion conflict from the first film, that wasn't just abstract philosophy.
No, the sources say it was a way for the filmmakers to comment on their society. The apes, using their religious scrolls to suppress science to maintain control it, was seen as a critique of how power structures in the real world, political or religious, can stifle truth and marginalize dissenters.
It becomes a metaphor for battles over truth and authority. And the franchise is even used to teach about things like post-colonialism.
Yeah, it works really well for that. Look at how the apes treat Taylor, giving him a silly name, bright eyes, caging him, denying his intelligence. It's textbook dehumanization, just like colonizers did to indigenous people.
Trying to erase the identity of the colonized, and the apes justifying it by saying humans are inferior.
Mirrors the civilizing mission rationale used in real-world colonialism. Assimilate or destroy the native culture.
And there was another related concept mentioned alongside Soylent Green in the source's cultural revitalization. How does that fit?
Well, the sources use Soylent Green to illustrate it, but the idea applies. Cultural revitalization is about resistance, reclaiming a lost identity or culture through memory or performance, especially when facing assimilation or societal collapse. While the apes sources don't explicitly label it this way, think about the narrative arcs. Humans losing their culture, speech, knowledge, apes building theirs, then maybe losing it or fighting to preserve it. That whole struggle over identity and heritage, whether human or ape, resonates with the idea of cultural revitalization as a form of resistance.
Another lens to view the ongoing struggle in the films. And crucially, these aren't just historical allegories. The sources strongly argue for their continued relevance today.
Absolutely. They draw direct lines. Wars fought for land and oil, civilians caught in the crossfire, echoes of the conflicts in the films, themes of police brutality, violent protests straight out of Conquest.
That core conflict about whether society should prioritize gaining power over coexisting feels very current.
Painfully so. The speciesism discussion links directly to animal rights debates, and the overall dystopian vibe fear of technology, AI, surveillance, climate change, distrust in government. The films tap right into those modern anxieties. They hold a mirror to today, reflecting different anxieties for different times.
It's remarkable how adaptable the core premise is. It really functions as this ongoing thought experiment, doesn't it?
That's a great way to put it, a thought experiment about science fiction, philosophy, and politics. It explores the unintended consequences of scientific experimentation, like the virus and the reboots and bigger societal shifts.
It makes you question progress. Is new always better? And it forces us to confront the risks of chasing knowledge without wisdom or ethics.
Right. It wraps these huge questions in provocative yet entertaining narratives, nudging you, the listener, to think critically about our own future, our own nature.
And all this thematic weight, combined with great storytelling, has led to a massive, lasting impact culturally and industrially.
Oh, definitely. The sources say it had a wide impact on subsequent popular media, and not just by inspiring ape knockoffs.
It actually changed how Hollywood does business, didn't it?
Massively. The success of the original series, with its rapid sequels, spin-offs, tons of merchandise, basically created the blueprint for the modern media franchise.
Studios realized they could build entire universes around a single hit film, develop movies specifically to generate sequels, TV shows, games, toys.
Exactly. Planet of the Apes was a key early example showing how incredibly profitable that model could be. It helped shape the blockbuster strategy we see today.
And you can trace its influence in other sci-fi, too.
For sure. Films and shows in the 70s and 80s that use sci-fi to talk about race, like Alien Nation or Enemy Mine or V. More direct influences, too, like the comic Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth, or that Japanese Time of the Apes show.
And who can forget Mel Brooks making fun of the Statue of Liberty ending in Spaceballs? That shows how iconic it became.
Totally embedded in pop culture. And this cultural weight is matched by serious box office success.
It's the longest-running American science fiction film series, over 50 years.
And incredibly successful financially. Across all the films, it's pulled in over US $2 billion worldwide. Kingdom just pushed it over that milestone. The production costs combined are around $567 million, so that's a huge return.
Even the original was a monster hit back in '68, one of the top 10 films of the year, making $22 million, massive for the time.
And remember the TV ratings. Huge audiences watch the films on television, which is why they greenlit the TV series spin-offs. It had reached beyond the cinema.
And critically, it's had its ups and downs, but overall, a strong reception.
Yeah, the original was a smash success, critically and commercially. Some sequels like Beneath got poorer reviews initially, but the reboot trilogy, Rise, Dawn, War, was highly acclaimed. Kingdom is also being called well-received, engaging, delivering on the action and the ideas. The sources call it a consistently superb franchise, which is pretty amazing for something running this long.
That consistency is rare, and it's received major awards recognition, too.
Most notably, that honorary Oscar for John Chambers' makeup on the original. It was the first Oscar ever given specifically for makeup artistry, recognizing how groundbreaking his work was. The original also got nods for score and costumes, and Kingdom just got nominated for Best Visual Effects, crediting Weta FX.
Which brings us to the technology. The franchise, especially since Rise, has been a leader in visual effects.
Absolutely. It's constantly pushed the envelope in motion capture and beyond. That's how we get those incredibly believable, expressive apes.
And it's that performance capture, right? Translating the actor directly onto the digital character.
Exactly. Weta uses sophisticated mocap suits to track the actor's every move, every facial nuance. Then they map those detailed performances onto the CGI apes. That's how Andy Serkis could give Caesar such soul. It creates photoreal apes who audiences can not only relate to but cheer for.
And Kingdom supposedly took that even further.
Yeah, new heights of photorealism. The sources even mention AI-transformed filmmaking in Kingdom, so it's still right there on the cutting edge.
So the legacy includes not just the stories, but how movies themselves are made.
So wrapping things up, as we've gone through all this material, it's clear the Planet of the Apes franchise started from a simple observation, but grew incredibly complex. Shaped by writers like Serling and Wilson, evolving across all these different films and shows, it consistently used its fantastical setup to hold that mirror up to us.
Yeah, from questioning science versus faith to warning about nuclear war to those powerful allegories about race, colonialism, suppressing dissent. It was always about more than just apes on horseback, wasn't it? It makes you ask what civilization really means. Who gets to define it? Who builds it? Who tears it down?
It challenges our human-centered view, makes us think about our connection to nature and other species via anthrozoology. And it manages to connect those historical worries to things we're dealing with right now: conflict, technology, social division. It really encourages you, the listener, to dig deeper into the stories you consume.
And it wasn't just smart, it was influential. It helped invent the modern franchise model, pushed filmmaking technology forward, just a remarkable run.
Absolutely. And thinking about those themes, the sources raised cyclical conflict, the struggle for power, progress versus regression. Here's a final thought for you to chew on. Why are we so drawn to this specific future, a world where humans fall and apes rise? Maybe it's not just fear of our own end. Maybe, just maybe, there's a weird kind of subconscious hope there too, that intelligence, complex society, something meaningful might carry on, even if it's not us. What does our fascination with this ape-led future say about how we see ourselves and what we value in life itself?
Thanks for listening to All in All.